All right. Peace and greetings, YouTubers. So welcome to another edition of In the News. I definitely have to start off with the Brandy and Monica verses. Now, I know I'm a few days late. However, if you follow me, you know that I run a community center. And that center had been under renovation for most of the spring and pretty much all of the summer. And then this week, we finally moved back in. And man, there's nothing like moving back into a center and you just have truckload after truckload after truckload of furniture. I'm like, dang, we have this much stuff? I was like, goodness, because really, to be honest, I think it's worse unpacking the furniture than packing it up, because then that's when you really find out how much junk you have. I was like, my God, like, man, the whole week, I mean, I'm putting together bookshelves and mounting TVs on the wall and sliding couches across the room and going through box after box after box and then trying to program all the computers and everything. And you're doing all this with a mask on, so it's hot and everything. You can't even breathe that good. You're trying to still socially distance while you're trying to move the furniture. Then the kids see that you're back, and so they all want to come in, and you got to tell the kids, no, it's not ready yet. But they're all thirsty because it's 100 degrees outside, and I'm like, yo, look, the refrigerator's not even plugged up. I got nothing for you. Go to the ice cream truck, get one of them popsicles, let it melt, turn into Kool-Aid, do your thing. And so that was my whole week. I was tired. But getting back to verses, I really enjoyed it. It was for me, it was something I just needed for the week. There was some other stuff I was dealing with, and so that was the perfect escapism. I just really enjoyed the showcasing of the catalogs, and I think the lesson that came out of verses is that people have to stop sleeping on R&B music, and especially when it comes to the contributions of black women to R&B music, because when you're talking about the ratings, the two highest rated verses have been with R&B women, the Jill Scott and Erykah Badu, the Brandy and Monica. And at one point, as I was reading, I was seeing that, you know, there were moments when verses was pulling in more viewers than the VMAs. So it's like, you know, stop sleeping on these black people when it comes to the music industry and stop sleeping on R&B. And I think there's just a lesson to be had as well. I think a lot of times when you talk to the music industry, they've kind of dropped the ball when it comes to paying attention to what people are actually interested in. Because another thing that I also read was that 3 days after Versus had aired, you know, Monica and Brandy had generated almost 22 million streams of their music because so many people just were like, oh, I didn't remember this, or I never heard this before. This sounds really, really good. And that's what happens when you already have a really good catalog. I think that's what I really enjoyed about both, because both artists just had so many gems, and you got a little bit of everything. You know, you got the up-tempos, you got the party club bangers, you know, you got the songs that make you concentrate, you got the broken-hearted songs, you had the ballads, you had the inspirational tracks. There was so much to kind of just go through, and really they didn't even get a chance to go through a lot of their hits. There were a lot of hits that were left out. There were a lot of, you know, album tracks and fan favorites that were left out, and even then, the verses were still 3 hours long. Like, that's how you know you have a really dope catalog. That's how you know you're pulling your weight. And I think really people just miss singers. I think people miss like just vocals becoming a thing, you know, and I think people just also miss just the diversity of some catalogs when it comes to artistry. No disrespect to the newer artists, but I think sometimes, and I've said this a million times in my R&B is Dead series, is that you're getting a lot of artists who you just kind of keep getting the same thing every time. It's still nice, it's still enjoyable, but it's like, dang, okay, you gave me this whole album and it kind of all gives me the same essence. Cool. So I can't wait to see what you're going to do on the next album. And then they give you the same thing again. And then there's a mixtape and you get the same thing again. And then they're featured on somebody else's song and you get the same thing again. I'm like, you can't mix it up a bit. You know, just add a little zhuzh somewhere. Like, my goodness. And so I definitely enjoyed it. And then I'm not even going to lie. The memes and the jokes that came out of it were also very funny. I will say the energy was a little awkward in the beginning. I think within an hour, they kind of found their pocket. But I guess, you know, when you haven't really talked to somebody in 8 years, you're just not going to really just jump right in there and be buddy-buddy. But, you know, I'm glad that, you know, other people started releasing the different clips of them afterwards. So if there was any confusion about whether or not they got along or if they were going to be backstage beating each other up, you know, that kind of got cleared up with the backstage videos. And so, you know, I was happy for both of them. I really enjoyed the music, like I said. Just a good time, a nice trip down memory lane. And it's crazy to see how much they accomplished because they're not even really that old. I think they're, maybe 40 and 39? And when you look at how much they were able to do in like a 15, 20-year period, and they're not even, you know, they're barely 40 years old. Like, amazing. So I definitely enjoyed Versus. That was a good one. I'm not going to say if there was a winner or not. I'm not really big on trying to say who's the winner, who's that. I look at it more as like a celebration and a showcase. But I do think it was pretty equally matched to me, in my opinion. That's me. You ain't got to agree. I just think they both, the catalogs are very different, but very enjoyable. And I do think the order of how they picked the songs sometimes didn't match up. But I mean, because the songs were all so good, it didn't matter. But yeah, I definitely enjoyed it. It was really good. Anyway, let's get into our next story. So let's jump into Rachel Dolezal 2.0. aka Jessica Krug. If you haven't seen the story, this is about a white woman, Jessica Krug, who was from Kansas, who pretty much tried to pass as an Afro-Latina woman. Initially, she started off as, I guess you would say, a Black American woman. I guess that wasn't spicy enough, so she shifted it over, and now all of a sudden, she was Afro-Latina. And so the thing that got me was, as I was reading the story, I just knew that when I would see what she looked like, I just knew that at least maybe she was going to give off maybe like a Jessica Alba kind of look. If you remember when the movie Honey came out back in 2003, a lot of people thought Jessica Alba might have been half black or something just because of how she looked. And then it turned out, no, Jessica Alba was actually just white Native American. But, you know, there was an assumption that, or at least on my part, there was an assumption where, okay, she's going to at least kind of look the part. Because in order for her to do this convincingly for so many years to the point where she ends up becoming a college professor, she must really be very convincing to look at. And so then when I saw the pictures, I'm like, who this supposed to be? Now I'm looking at the picture. What? I was like, literally, like, when I saw the picture, I'm like, this is just giving me one of the people off Jersey Shore. Like, where is the Afro anything? You know, at least if she would have tried to say, okay, I'm Latina, she could have pulled that off a little bit, because we know, like, Latino isn't an actual race, it's an ethnicity, and it has many, many different looks. So, you know, when you're talking about somebody being Latino or Latina, it can go from Jennifer Lopez to Ted Cruz to Mark Anthony to who else? Sofia Vergara or Shakira, like a bunch of different looks. But the minute she added that Afro in there, my expectation was, okay, this is going to be like a Celia Cruz or Roberto Clemente or who else? Zoe Saldana, you know, somebody from, you know, the Caribbean or Central or South America that has a bit of extra brown in them, and they just might speak a little Spanish. That's what I thought I was going to see. So then when I see this woman who's pretty much giving me baby girl Lisa from 90 Day Fiancé with just some jet black hair, maybe a little bit younger and a little bit of extra youth, I'm like, who this supposed to be? How did y'all even buy into that? I'm wondering how many people around her were like, nah, something ain't right in the water. Because, you know, even with somebody like Rachel Dolezal, what got her caught up was that she played into her role so much as far as pretending to be a black woman that, you know, she staged a hate crime against her. And then that's what pretty much got her caught up when the questions and the answers didn't really add up. And so I'm looking at this person and I'm like, what are you doing? Can we get into this bio here? Because as I kept looking at the story, it just kept getting funnier and funnier. So this is her bio. It was on one of like the professional sites. Jessica Krug is an unrepentant and unreformed child of the hood. Whether dancing, doing research around the world, or teaching, movement is her first language. Much of her time, energy, and all of her heart are consumed in the struggle for her community in El Barrio and worldwide. Whether against the violence of the state is manifest by police, the encroaching colonialism or gentrification, or around issues of community health and environmental justice. She teaches, writes, and is an organizer with Harlem Cop Watch and works with Revolutionary Fitness. In the end, she firmly believes that everything works better when remixed to bachata. The other issue I have is like literally you see the same thing with her that you see with Rachel, where they pretty much just take bits and pieces from other cultures and try to create a super being. And like, so it's like you can tell that there's a disconnect with how they see black people, or how they see Afro-Latinos, or how they see anybody other than themselves. And so they've created in their minds what they think a specific group of people behave and act like, and then they latch onto that. They latch onto the lingo and everything else. And I'm like, you know, it's in addition to it just being offensive, I'm just like, really, you're trying to pretend to be an ally, and you're trying to push this narrative that you're fighting for a struggle and you're fighting for justice, but really you're just as racist as the next person. You're playing right into the same role. And then when I found out she was even doing salsa lessons. Have you seen the clip of her doing the salsa lessons? Like, where's that clip? Look. First of all, I'm trying to figure out, you know, one, stiff. Two, that's the other beef I have. It's like when they go and they do these things, not only do they pretend to be something that they're not, but they literally try to be in control of the full narrative of that experience, and they always try to fight and claw and get positions of power. And then they want to be the gatekeepers of that culture and teach it to other people. I'm looking at this salsa, this stiff salsa. Now listen, I'm not that very well versed into Latino or Latino culture or anything like that, but I'm sure that when it comes to the salsa, the hips are supposed to move a little bit more than that. She's not giving us salsa. That's tomato paste. All right, Shakira said her hips don't lie. Jessica, your hips have told on you. That's what gave it away for me. I was just like, man, absolutely crazy. And then the fact that she has 812 different accents. Can we talk about the accents?
I also want to call out all these white New Yorkers who waited 4 hours with us to be able to speak, and then did not yield their time to Black and brown Indigenous New Yorkers who thought that their sense of, I thought cops was here to protect us, but I guess they're not. Boy, you think that this sort of like shock and empathy thing is the move. Oh, So a couple of things. You was talking about, Chair, you was talking about moving against the gang database. What's up with that? Because last I checked, that's still operating. Last I checked, that's still up. You talk about us to show up, been shown up in all these neighborhood council meetings, trying to fight gentrification. Ain't nothing changed. And then real quick, I want to talk about some of my experiences in the Bronx on Thursday. So, you know, y'all heard from a few people who were there, and thank you, much power to all my siblings who were standing up, my Black and brown siblings who were standing. Y'all know what it was.
So, exactly what accent is that supposed to be? I'm a little confused. I'm just trying to figure out who was that supposed to represent. Was that the black accent, or was that the Afro-Latina accent? I'm confused, because what I'm hearing somebody that is disguising their voice and playing into a role that they've created for themselves, where they've gone home and they've practiced this accent all day, and it does not come off as natural, and it doesn't sound like anything that makes sense to me. I hear a bunch of different tidbits from different pieces that have been put together, and it's like she's literally acting, and it just sounds like it. Like, literally, you know, you don't went in there and you come off sounding like John F. Kennedy. I'm confused. Like, I'm hearing bits and pieces of Long Island. I'm hearing a little bit of Boston. I'm hearing a little bit of New Jersey. Don't fight me, New Jersey. I'm just telling you that's what it sounds like to me. You know, I'm hearing the mom off the cartoon Bobby's World. I'm sure that's not what she went to as a reference, but it sounded like that to me. I'm even hearing that little girl from the movie The Bad Seed. Not sure if you've ever seen that movie, but it's this movie from the 1950s with this little white girl that was terrorizing the neighborhood. I mean, she was bad. She was killing up folks and everything. But there's this scene where the man who was like the housekeeper or something like that, he found these shoes that she thought she had burned up. These were the shoes of this little boy that she drowned at the lake. And so she was fighting the man to get the shoes back. You know, those shoes are mine. Don't give me those shoes. Like, I'm hearing all of that. And so I'm confused as to exactly what accent is she playing into? And again, this is not to say that all black people sound the same, because when we want to have a conversation about accent, when we talk about regional dialects, when we talk linguistics, when we talk tone, when we talk texture, we will be here all day, because black people collectively have so many different elements and characteristics to how they sound when they communicate. And so again, what I'm seeing is somebody who's pretty much pieced together her own idea of what she thinks black or Afro-Latina is, and, you know, pieced it together, created her own reality, and now she's trying to present it as fact. And that in itself is racist. That's one of the issues we have with something like the music industry in Hollywood as well, where you have people up top in the offices who cannot relate to the very demographic that they're marketing things to, because one, they don't have enough people on these teams that represent those cultures and that come from those cultures, but they hire people who will tell the people in that demographic, this is your culture, this is what you're supposed to be like, this is what's good for you, now consume it. And so that's why you have so many issues when you talk about a lot of these Hollywood movies, especially when they do biopics, and the family's always pissed off because the family wasn't consulted, or even when you're talking music and when you talk about what rappers get spoon-fed to us, and, you know, you're seeing all of that. And so, again, when it comes to culture, when there's a culture that does not belong to you, meaning that you were not born into it, you weren't raised in it, none of it is anything natural in regards to your experience. You have no ties to it. The only connection you have with that culture is because you've read about it, you've watched it in movies, you've heard it in music, maybe you got a few black friends, and so you've pieced together what you've learned and you've created a new reality for yourself. That's what she's done, and the fact that she would go to a university and work as a professor, and now, you know, she's presenting herself to be something that she's not. All of that is an issue. Like, again, when you're talking culture, there's just things that you can't create. There's things you can't duplicate no matter how hard you try. And again, when we're talking this accent, like, you know, my mother could have a whole conversation with me and not even say a word, just sound effects. You know, I could be doing something I wasn't supposed to be doing, and my mom would be like, and then, you know, I'd look at her like, what? And, you know, she'd look at And so, like, some of you may have understood everything I just said, and some of you are looking at me like, what the heck was that? And so, again, that's the point that I'm trying to make. There's things you cannot duplicate. And, like, just paying attention, after seeing that stiff salsa she had, I am convinced, I know for sure she claps on the 1s and 3s. Like, she's going to fit right in on Family Feud. Problem is, I don't know if she talks to her family since she wants to be something she's not. And again, I think the bigger beef that I have is these people tend to only want to be black or only want to align with blackness when it's time to collect. They're not there for the oppression. They're not there for the discrimination, the structural racism, the systemic racism, the oppression. They're not there for any of that, but they will show up when it's time to collect. And the insulting aspect is the fact that when we talk about what's being collected, there's not a lot to collect to begin with, because America could give 2 F words about black people collectively. And so the handful of crumbs that are out there, they've already jumped in line to snatch up. That's the issue I have. When you're talking about even on a collegiate level, when you're talking college, do you know how hard it is for so many black people to elevate when you're talking about those college positions, when you're talking about getting tenure, when you're talking about, really locking in and being the head or the dean of different departments? She was over Africana studies. You gotta be kidding me. At least it could have been a little less terrible if maybe she was just over English. But no, you're literally teaching black people and white people who would like to learn about black people. You're the one in charge. You're the gatekeeper to that information. And the issue I have with that, I don't know if you've been seeing this, but a lot of times when you look at what's happening in academia, when you're looking at what's happening within the college experience, especially as you get to the higher levels, when you get to the graduate levels, when you get to the doctoral programs and everything like that, of course, the diversity it gets slimmer and slimmer and slimmer, but you see the elements of the racism really jump in and kick out. How many times do you see a viral post where there's a black student who feels some kind of way because they're in an African-American rhetoric class or African-American literature or black sociology or black politics or political African theory, all these different kind of courses. And of course, it's a white professor or a professor who is not black. And when they assign the reading material, all of the reading material are from people who are not even black. And the student feels some kind of way like, wait a minute, if we're going to do this black history course, can we at least read a few, people who are black? And then, of course, the professor responds, well, if you don't like it, you can drop the class, or you need to understand everything doesn't revolve this way, and we have to look through other lenses in order to understand your experience. Like, you see that all the time. And so that's one of the dangerous aspects of when you have certain people in positions that they should not be in. And somebody like a Jessica Krug, or whatever her last name is, she's literally all of the red flags. She's a walking red flag. And you got her over there at George Washington teaching. Like, you got to be kidding me. And I know some people are like, oh, you're being too hard on her. No, it's not that. The issue is, again, you keep seeing people, they show up when it's time to collect. I want to know how often does her blackness stay on? When she gets pulled over by the police, is she still old girl from whatever part she's trying to be from? Or does she go back to being Jessica? I want to know that. If she's in the hospital in pain, we already know that history has shown us, and the reports have shown us, that a lot of times nurses and doctors ignore the pain of black patients, especially black women, because they feel that black people have a higher tolerance for pain. So if she's in the hospital in pain, I want to know if she's still playing into Miss Afro-Latina salsa bachata all day, or does she go back to being Jessica? I want to know that. When it comes to getting housing, when she has to get that bank loan or the FHA loan, I want to know, when she's signing that document, is she still Miss Bachata all day, or does she go right back to being Jessica? I want to know all of that. I want to know, like, when she goes to the store, is she being followed? Like, again, you don't get to just show up for the good times. That's the issue I have. Notice, none of these people were around during Jim Crow. They weren't signing up to be black then. They weren't signing up during the Nadir period. They weren't signing up during failed Reconstruction. They weren't signing up during slavery. They weren't signing up during housing discrimination. They weren't signing up to be a part of the education gap or the wealth gap, or even when you're talking healthcare discrimination. They're not signing up for none of that. They're signing up to be the professors. They're signing up to sit on these panels and discuss race like it's a coffee conversation. And of course, they want to be the gatekeepers to the information. And people are looking to them as the end-all be-all of knowledge on a specific conversation and a specific experience that they're not a part of. They're playing dress up. I don't have time for it. And really, if she really was all about, I'm all about the black oppression and helping the people, she could have gotten further just being a white woman. Ask Tim Wise. Ask Jane Elliott. They built entire careers teaching white people about racism because white people will have a more open ear to somebody white telling them about race than they would for me. That's one of the reasons why I can upload a video on YouTube and talk about the discrepancies when you talk about what happened with Jacob Blake, and YouTube yanks my video down because it violates the terms of the community guidelines. I'm like, really? Okay, whatever, YouTube. And so, again, I gotta be for Jessica. I gotta be for Rachel. I ain't feeling it. Like, again, my experience is not dress up. And so there's nothing she can tell me about myself. She does not represent me, which is why I feel some kind of way about her making it that far within her career playing dress up. And nobody called it out? Like, are you kidding me? And I don't care about that nice little apology she has. She said, I'm a culture vulture and I've just hurt. I'm so hurt. I'm so sorry. Save it. You know what you was doing? You just got caught. And now all of a sudden, hell's breaking loose and you're trying to save face. Now all of a sudden that privilege jumps back in. And the way that the privilege works is she gets to go back to being a white woman. I don't know what she's going to choose to do, but, she'll probably pull like a Rachel and change her name. I mean, Rachel is still riding with this. She's changed her name to some kind of West African name or something like that. But, there's a privilege that comes in all of this. Like, this is just a joke to me. So I can't take Jessica serious. I'm sorry. Like, what kind of foolery? I'm just still stuck on the picture. She didn't even look like she was anything. Like, how? Y'all got to be kidding me. And that dang salsa, boy. tomato paste dancing, and then you got the nerve to teach a class. I hope they got their money back. Anyway, moving on. So I want to take a few moments to talk about the show Made by Maddie. Now, initially this show was supposed to premiere on September 13th. However, after the press release came out, the show was pulled because there was so much backlash. The premise of the show, and mind you, this was a show that had been in development since about 2015. The purpose of the show was supposed to follow a young black girl who pretty much, lives through her imagination, and she uses her imagination to solve a bunch of different problems, and somehow it ties into the elements of fashion and a few other things. And so that was the show. Now, when the press release comes out and people see the illustrations and the images, a lot of people feel that it looks a lot like Matthew Cherry's Hair Love. If you remember, Hair Love was recently, celebrated because it won an Oscar for Best Short Film. And so Hair Love is a Matthew Cherry production where, it's pretty much, you can say it's a love affair with black hair, where it's the father and the daughter, and he's trying to do her hair and everything. And it's like a conversation that celebrates, the complexities and the dynamics of black hair. And so it was a very loved and celebrated short film that got a lot of accolades at the top of the year. So many people feel that the imaging and the illustrations of Made by Maddie is a blatant ripoff of Hair Love. And then I found some tweets from an illustrator that actually worked on Hair Love and also had some connections to DreamWorks and everything else like that. And they said, the director of Made by Maddie was fully aware of Hair Love's existence. Him and I were at the same animation workshop led by Matthew Cherry, talking about the making of the movie, which included showing designs. This is art theft and disregard for black creators in their art, period. So I'm not even going to spend a lot of time on just that portion, because again, I think from what's being presented, the content of the two shows is very different. The illustrations clearly are a blatant ripoff. Even the cat looks the same. Come on. But the issue I have is when I look at the team of people behind Made by Maddie. Can we go to the pictures? My question again, just like we talked about with Jessica Krug, if you're going to have any kind of content that's supposed to represent a culture, where are the people on the team that come from that culture? Again, you're seeing the same thing where there's people that pretty much decipher and decide what is best for another group's culture when it comes to representation. Let's do this. So, growing up, one of my best friends, still a good friend today, we don't get to talk as much because our lives are very different, but one of my best friends growing up was Samoan, right? And so I had a great experience with him and his family. His family was so loving. It was he had 6 siblings. I ate so good when I went to their house. They just had every snack you could think about. You ate so good. I don't know how I'm still skinny at this big age, but I ate so good going to their house. I mean, the family was so loving. They used to have these big giant parties. Used to spend the night over there all the time. So let's just say that my appreciation for his family just being so cool and so loving and so welcoming, I decide I want to make a show about Samoans because I feel that they don't have enough representation in entertainment. If we want to be honest, most people, when you talk about who can you name in Hollywood that's Samoan, other than The Rock, most people can't think of somebody off the top of their head. So you know what? I want to make a show about Samoans. And so let's say I go and I do this show, and I'm going to pick the whole team of people that are going to work on this show. And they're going to, I got it, guys. I've grown up with a few Samoans. I know their culture. I'll do the whole thing myself. I'll pick the whole team. And let's say I put this whole team together. Nobody from the team is from Samoa or American Samoa or not even Pacific Islander. The whole team is everybody else but them, right? And so I come out with the show, and let's say the show was great. No matter how much love and good intent may be behind my initial idea, in the end, the connection will not be there because that experience that I'm trying to portray as Samoan is through a black lens, through a lens of how I see them, not how they see themselves. And so in reality, it will most likely be offensive to that collective when they find out that, okay, you're the one telling my story. But to go even deeper, let's say that, best friend decides he wants to make a show about his own experience, and he comes to the same network that I'm working at. That network is already going to say, well, we already got the Samoan show. Calvin Michaels did one. So, thanks. Come again, maybe you should check out BET or somebody. Good day. That's literally what's happening. And so when you're talking about these shows that continue to market content to other marginalized groups of people, but then the people behind the scenes have no connection. The whole team, where the black people at? And see, if maybe they had some people on the team, they could have said, okay, we can go a different route with the illustrations. They're so limited with their scope of how they see black people that literally now they think there's only one image of how black people are supposed to look. So make the characters look exactly like Matthew Cherry's. And that will really connect with them then. That'll show them. Let's give them some locks. We did it now. See what I mean? So again, had they had some people in the room, they could have said, actually, no, I think we need to do some different illustrations because this looks too much like Hair Love. And we can tell you right now, it's going to be hell on earth to pay if this gets out. Somebody else would have said, no, let's go a different route. They could have done some different imaging. And the thing is, black illustrators exist. all kind of black content creators are everywhere. Listen, you big giant corporations, because I know some of y'all are watching. Listen, do yourself a favor. Just hashtag black creatives on Twitter and search. You can find any and everything on there. Black people who are architects, black people who are fashion designers, producers, screenwriters. They can do literally anything. Graphic design. Don't embarrass yourselves and keep trying to hire people that don't reflect and represent certain cultures. You're going to have to actually do the research. I don't understand who's working at these, director of diversity positions, but clearly somebody ain't doing their job. I ain't trying to say somebody need to get fired, but come on, really? Like, again, and it sucks for the Made by Maddie show, because again, it seems like the content was going to be something different, but again, when people feel that you blatantly just ripped off another production or another project, and it's like there's not even an effort to try to, come off as something different. It's like an insult. Like, come on, you blatantly just pretty much rip off their thing. It reminds me of, remember Soul Train was really, really big. And so Dick Clark, who already pretty much had a monopoly on TV with American Bandstand because it had just super high ratings, he was like, wait, I want some of that black viewership too. So he comes out with Soul Unlimited, which was pretty much a blatant ripoff of Soul Train. Like, see, this is kind of that same pattern you keep seeing repeat itself in Hollywood and in entertainment. So I say do better. All right, lighting change. The sun went down, had to readjust my settings. So this next story is one that I think is actually really, really cool. It's a great conversation about ownership. My only wish is that I wish they would have kind of kept all of this under wraps, kind of kept it something that was low-key secret, because again, sometimes when you find out about people doing good, the world and the downsides of society kind of take over and people do terrible things to try to ruin a good thing, especially when it comes to race in America. But there are 19 black families that went out and purchased 96.7 acres of land. And what they would like to do is develop this land, live on this land, and pretty much have this land operate as a safe space for black people to exist. I think it's a beautiful thing, but again, because of the country that we live in, it makes me nervous for the safety and the well-being of that establishment when it becomes established. So, I think it's a good idea. And again, when you're talking safe spaces, I don't think people understand that, especially for black people collectively. 2020 has already been terrible for everybody when you just look at everything that's been happening. But for black people, or those who identify within this conversation, in addition to dealing with everything in 2020, you still got to live under the umbrella of a racist system that affects people disproportionately. Like, that's the other aspect that comes with having black skin. And sometimes people just need escapism from reality, because no matter where they go, you got to constantly deal with racism, you got to constantly deal with a bunch of chaos. Some people just want a safe space where they can exist. I think this is why people oftentimes choose to go to an HBCU. I remember one of my college professors at Howard was saying, I was offered a position at Dartmouth and it was paying literally 5 times what I was getting at Howard, but I chose to stay at Howard because for that Tuesday and that Thursday that I go out there, I feel that I can exist as a person. I don't feel that I'm being judged by my race. I'm not looked at as the black professor. I'm looked at as the professor. And because people see me as the professor, they're not second guessing or questioning my antics or questioning my practices. If I give somebody a crappy grade on an assignment, they're not going to the dean because they feel that the professor that gave me this D wasn't qualified to give me that D, because I indirectly think I'm smarter than them because of where they come from and how they look, and the fact that I think that maybe they're only here because of affirmative action. Like, for that professor, he said none of that was his experience because, when he steps out onto this campus, he gets to be himself. That's an experience that exists. And so I did hear some people trying to say, oh, I think this is a bad idea. This is segregation. And I'm like, no, we're not going to have that conversation, because one, this land is something that's being privately purchased by a bunch of different families. They're living on the land, doing whatever they want with the land. And I'm sure that if they do open businesses on the land, the businesses can still serve any and everybody, but the money that's going to those businesses would stay within that community. Pretty much something you see other communities do all the time. If I go to my home state of Washington and I drive down South Tacoma Way in Tacoma, I know that that is the Southeast Asian portion of town. I know that when I drive down that strip, pretty much every business sign is going to be written in Korean or Vietnamese or Chinese or Japanese, and I recognize that really that's their community building up their own community. I can still go inside of each and every store. I probably really won't have an interest with a lot of the things that they're selling, but if I go into a restaurant or whatever, I'm still going to be served, and I just recognize that this is the community that they've built for themselves so that they can exist and have their own peace of mind living in the society that they live in. That's something you see in any major metropolitan area where you have pockets of populations that build up certain sides of town, and it kind of aligns with the demographics of the people who live there. If you go to Falls Church, Virginia, same thing. You're going to see a huge Salvadorian population. You're going to see a huge, again, Korean population where you have portions of town where people build up that section, and it kind of fits with the people who live there. It's not saying that other people aren't allowed to even step foot on that side, and if you drive there, it's going to be, you're going to be arrested. It's just saying, hey, culturally, this is what the people have built up for themselves. And that's the same thing with this establishment. I think people just already have such a warped view of how they see other groups of people, and they assume that if you drive past this establishment, there's going to be a black militia out there with AK-47s and you will be shot upon entry. Like, that's kind of the verbiage that I'm seeing people sit and put out there. But if you want to talk segregation is something that was federally endorsed and enforced. You had black people pretty much get arrested for going into the wrong restaurants, walking into the zoo, going to the bank, trying to go to the wrong school, going into the wrong store. Like, that is not the same conversation. That's when you're talking segregation in the United States. You're talking public land, public space where black people were not permitted to go, even though they still paid property taxes for those places to exist. You know what I mean? Different conversation. And again, it's a conversation about just comfort and familiarity. Like, even in my experience growing up in Washington State, the high school I went to, Spanaway Lake High School, I don't know what it's like now, but at the time that I went there, it was a pretty white school, but it was also still diverse in comparison to some of the other schools that were majority white. And so you had a bunch of different communities that existed within the school. And what do you think happened when it was lunchtime? Everybody ran with who they culturally identified with. Me being a high schooler at that school, I got along with everybody. I could run and hang with the theater kids. Those were all the kids that were like gothic and had on black lipstick and black nail polish. And, I'm a nonconformist and I don't succumb to the ways of what everyone else does when it comes to fashion. I just get to be myself because I'm an individual. I could run with all of them. I could run with the athletes. I could run with the student council folks. I could run with everybody. But come lunchtime, I knew that the table I was going to sit at was the black table. One, because there wasn't that many of us at the school to begin with, but culturally, these were the people I could relate to the most. And most likely, I didn't have a class with a lot of them, so this would be the only time I'd get to see a lot of them until we got out of school. And so that 30 minutes at that table would be the most lit part of the day. And it wasn't just black folks at the black table. You would see the Pacific Islanders running at their table. You see the Southeast Asians at their table. The Latino community, they were going to be at their table. The Alaskan Natives, they were going to be at their table. White folks were going to kind of be spread around at their tables and everything. And it wasn't like there was bad blood. Anybody could sit at anybody's table because all of us still, to an extent, got along. But culturally, we wanted to be with the people we kind of identified with, at least during lunch for them 30 minutes. Like, it's no hard, bad blood or hard feelings. I'll see you in 30 minutes back in class. But, let me have my 30 minutes with my people for a minute. That's what it was. Even at Howard, like living in Meridian Hill Hall, for those of you from HU who went, you remember HU, Meridian, M.Dot, it's no longer there. But in Meridian, my junior year, the dorm had about 780 residents, right? But there were 2 white students that lived in the dorm as well. And who do you think those 2 white students dated? They dated each other, not because they were racist or they hated anybody, but culturally, they identified with each other because they shared a similar experience where they were the minority on a majority black campus. And when it comes to cultural experiences and everything else like that, they could relate to each other a little bit more. So maybe they had that connection and that's why they dated. That's just what's in my head. But again, that's how I looked at, that establishment. Now, again, my only fear is I'm praying that, that the racist tropes that exist and the terrible aspects and the terrible elements of America don't go and terrorize that specific area, because it makes me think of Tulsa. And also, speaking of Tulsa, I don't know if you've seen, but there is a lawsuit that is taking place in regards to Tulsa where the last 2 living survivors are suing and they want reparations for what happened during the Tulsa riots of 1921. Let me jump into the reading really quick. One of the plaintiffs is Don M. Adams, the nephew of Dr. A.C. Jackson, an accomplished black surgeon who was shot in the stomach as he tried to surrender to the mob. He bled for 5 hours before he died, said Demario Solomon Simmons, the lead lawyer for the plaintiffs. Another plaintiff, Leslie Benningfield Randall, was a child when the massacre occurred. According to the lawsuit, Miss Randall, who is 105, says she still has flashbacks of corpses being stacked on the street as her neighborhood burned, according to the complaint. She constantly relives the terrors, said Eric Miller, a lawyer for the plaintiffs, and yet the city of Tulsa has done nothing to compensate her for the damages it has inflicted on her life. As many as 300 black people were killed. That's something that's still kind of debatable. People are still kind of questioning if that is the right figure. Some people think it's a lot more. And more than 1,200 homes were destroyed. Members of the Oklahoma National Guard arrested black victims instead of white looters. Photos taken at the time show black people being marched down the street at gunpoint, their arms raised over their heads. And so, again, we've talked about Tulsa a million times on this channel, but long story short, Tulsa was a race riot that took place in well, I wouldn't even call it a race riot. It was more like an attack where, again, in Tulsa, it's 1921, 3 years after the end of World War I. And so the white side of town is not doing as well financially as the black side of town, the Greenwood side, all right? And so long story short, There's a situation with a man named Dick Rowland in an elevator where there's a white woman who claims, he assaulted her. The charges end up getting dropped, but there's a white mob that shows up, and pretty much while Rowland was still in custody, the mob pretty much said, go ahead and give us him, we'll take care of him. They're gonna go lynch him, kill him, do whatever. And so, there's another black group that shows up, and they're like, absolutely not, we're gonna make sure that this doesn't happen. I'm gonna kind of fast forward and water down this story for the sake of time, but just know that there's pretty much a fight that initially erupts, and the black militia that shows up is outnumbered, because at this point now there's over 1,000 white men with guns and weapons that are ready to attack, in addition to the fact that they're also getting additional support from the police department. Sounds like 2020. But anyway, and so they chase the black demographic or the black militia back into the black side of town, and then that's when they start burning up everything, and they start shooting folks and everything else, and it's straight chaos. This would also be the very first time that a bomb was dropped on American soil. Okay, they had an actual plane where they literally dropped a bomb on that side of town, and this is coming from the state government. And so Tulsa is chaos, and the worst part about Tulsa is that Tulsa was not the only race riot that happened in the United States. We've talked about Rosewood before, but there are so many. Literally every major metropolitan city on the East Coast and the Midwest has had some kind of riot. Even in Arizona, they've had some kind of riot. DC's had one, Chicago's had one, Detroit has had one, Columbia's had one, Atlanta's had one. It's like city after city, St. Louis, Newark, New York, like literally so many. A great research project for you to do is go back and look at just all of the race riots that took place in America's history. And so that's the reality of what's been happening in the past. And so when you talk about like what happened with Tulsa, those people definitely deserve every penny. Like the fact that this entire establishment was burned to the ground, an entire well-to-do area of black people who were self-sufficient, because we know in this conversation about race, the first thing people want to do when they want to shut up black people, when black people complain about the structural systems that are in place that work against them, people say, oh, pull yourself up by the bootstrap. You need to work hard and then stop complaining. Here goes that victimhood. Here comes the race card. They got a whole list of statements they got to throw out there that they kind of use as weapons to kind of get you to shut up. But here you go. You have an entire established black community, self-sufficient, doing exactly what y'all said, pulling themselves up by the bootstrap, doing their own things, taking care of their own, and look what happened. Still gets burned down, mainly because when you have that element of jealousy, because again, like we said, the whiter side of town was not doing well economically. And what makes that even funnier, it's not funny, but Tulsa was not even initially owned by white Americans. That was a portion of Indian territory. The Native Americans ended up losing that, of course, and by the time you got to about 1880, you had white settlers start moving into Tulsa, because initially the handful of white people that were moving into Tulsa initially were all felons. That was kind of an escapism place to kind of set up shop. But by the time you get to 1880, you have this family where there's a man who was married to a woman of Cherokee descent. And of course, this is the era of blood quantum laws where, as they were pushing all the Native Americans out west, depending on where you lived, some state and local governments would give the Native Americans money and land to move further out. This wouldn't be something that was federally kind of supported until the 1930s, but you did have some people initially getting land and getting property by signing on the paper saying they were Native American. You also saw white people lying and doing that as well, which is why you have a lot of blue-eyed blonde people running around today claiming that they're Native American. And so even with that, as you saw the man move in, and him and his wife, and he was one of the largest ranchers in that area, so he had just acres and acres of land. He and the wife start having family. Their friends start moving over. Before you know it, boom, we're getting ready to what you would call establish a place like Tulsa. And Tulsa becomes kind of more of its own city. So pretty much it's another place where the land was stolen. So literally, you're already on stolen land that you really didn't have to pay for. And then they're still not doing well economically. So when they see a black side of town, and these are people that are only, 60 years out of slavery, when you see them doing well and doing better than you, and you already feel that you're entitled to everything that they have, and you feel some kind of way, here comes the violence. And one of the sadder stories that came out of Tulsa was there was an older black man who was a military veteran, and he felt that if he could stand out in the street in his military uniform and throw the salute, that would help stop the rioters. Guess what happened to him? He's dead. And not because of old age. He was shot and killed on sight. That's the point that I'm making. Which kind of ties to the conversation that's happening now, because a lot of people are pissed off with the current president over some of the statements that he said about, veterans and those who died in war were losers and people who went to Vietnam were suckers and so on and so forth. And I've seen people say, okay, well, Trump really has lost the military vote now. And I'm like, I don't know. Because just based on how people responded in Tulsa to the man that was doing the salute, I don't know. I honestly don't, because I think the people who are 100% loyal to the current president, I don't think there's much you can say or do, or he can say or do, to change their mind. It's just going to be what it is. You know what I mean? And so, there's so many conversations to be had. So again, with the families that bought that land, much luck to them. Please protect yourselves, enjoy your space, and do great. And then even with the lawsuit in regards to reparations around Tulsa, I hope that they're able to, get what's theirs. The sad part is that they are so much older. I don't know if they will live to, see the outcome in the final ruling, because, with cases like this, they will stretch and drag this out for years and years and years. And then even when there's a decision that's made, of course, it's going to go to an appellate court. And I'm sure then even when that's made, it's going to go to the Supreme Court. And there's this could be a 20, 30-year case if we're being honest. And so, again, so much to be said. Anyway, moving on. So with this last case, I'm going to kind of use it as a segue into a larger conversation, and I'm going to cross my fingers and pray that I can keep this video under an hour, because I know for sure I'm already at the 40-minute mark. But anyway, let us keep going. I'm in my pocket right now, so let's just keep it going. So when we talk Breonna Taylor, if you follow me, you know that we've talked Breonna Taylor since the case became pretty much a public story. And so now with a few updates, you have the boyfriend Kenneth Walker, who has filed a civil lawsuit against the Louisville Police Department as well as the DA. When you look at the details of the case, again, you had Breonna Taylor and Kenneth Walker, who were in Breonna's apartment sleeping. It's way past midnight. The police decide to do a no-knock warrant, pretty much where they can bust into your apartment and don't announce who they are or even knock. And so they bust up in there. They don't announce that they're the police. Kenneth thinks that somebody's breaking in. He uses his weapon to fire a round off. Of course, when you shoot a weapon anywhere near police, all hell is about to break loose. They spray up the place like a scene out of Set It Off with Cleo. Breonna Taylor is shot 8 times, and unfortunately, she does not live. And the worst aspect in all of it is that they don't even administer first aid or CPR. And before people try to say, oh, well, that's not in the police job description, actually it is. If you look at their code of conduct, if you look at their handbook, what they're supposed to do is they're supposed to do what it is they can do until EMTs arrive. So initially, they wouldn't even help Breonna Taylor. So of course, she passes on and she dies. And so you have Kenneth, who has now filed a civil lawsuit. And an additional detail in the case that's very important, because one of the things I've seen on any video I have of Breonna Taylor is that people keep trying to say, oh, well, she was pushing drugs, she was selling drugs. There were no drugs found in the apartment. There were no drugs found on Breonna Taylor. There were no drugs found on Kenneth Walker. And one of the other things that people somehow mixed up is the fact that they're mixing up the ex-boyfriend, Jamarcus Glover, with Kenneth Walker and painting them to be the same person and twisting it all together with a narrative that still makes no sense. And so what the police initially claimed that they were trying to do is they had a case on Jamarcus Glover. And because Jamarcus was Breonna's ex-boyfriend, they were under the assumption that Jamarcus lived with Breonna, and that's who they went in there looking for, allegedly. That's what they're trying to state, so on and so forth. But even in Jamarcus's case, he's saying no, the police are corrupt with that as well, because even with the plea deal that they offered him, he's stating that the police said, we'll give you a really great plea deal if you can just name Breonna Taylor as your co-defendant. If you can just tie her name to all of this, we can take some years off of whatever sentence you just might get. Because again, when the police do wrong, when they kill somebody who's unarmed, and they don't look good in the public eye, they're going to do any and everything they can to piece together a narrative that makes them look like they're in the right. Because really, it doesn't take that much to get the masses to kind of sway and agree with whatever the police are talking about. And we've had that conversation a million times before. People may not like that I have to say this, but again, when we talk policing in America, when it comes to the white collective and how they view police, the police are always going to be right. No ifs, ands, or buts. Collectively, white Americans always will see the police as right, because we have that conversation of good and bad. And I'm going to say this conversation again, even if it gets this video yanked off YouTube. When it comes to how people have been conditioned within the United States, people are conditioned to believe that there are good people and there are bad people. And if we're being honest, good people is just code for white. Bad people is code for everybody else who's not white. Everybody else who is not white will never be considered good. You can be one of the good bad people, but there is no amount of good deeds that you can do to ever be considered one of the good ones. You can just be good enough to be in close proximity to the good ones, but with limitations. And the minute that a hair is out of place, you go back to the bad box. And anything terrible that happens to you is justified. I also think this is one of the reasons why when sometimes you see black people or people of any other group of people as far as, another race, a lot of times when you see them align with a white supremacist or align with, any kind of racist policy, you tend to notice that they go super, super hard for it. I mean, they just live and breathe it, and there's so much conviction with how they feel, and it's like they literally hate their own race. Why? Because they recognize the more performative they become when it comes to trying to be one of the good ones, the more, the more cookies they get. as far as getting closer into proximity with the good box. They still are never going to get to be one of the good ones, but okay, now they're a favorite of the good ones. Now they're going to be used as the example of what the bad ones need to be like in order to prosper in this country. That's what you end up seeing. And when we talk about police, white people, specifically collectively white people, see the police as an extension of themselves. And so any critique of the police will always feel like an attack on white people collectively. That's why you can never get a large amount of white people to understand what's happening with policing in America. For them, it's foreign. For them, it means that the bad people must have done something. And that's what you've seen happen in any conversation where you have an unarmed individual who is shot and killed by police. Any video of mine you go on, it doesn't even have to be mine, any YouTube video you go on where there's an unarmed black person who's killed by police, there's always a group of people who are going to flock in there and they're going to find something wrong that person did. Even with Breonna Taylor, who was asleep, people were saying, oh, well, she should have been doing drugs. She wasn't. But again, for them, they're like, oh, well, look at the ex-boyfriend, guilty by association. Of course, she's one of the bad ones. It's all justified. Like, that's literally what happens every single time. And so, again, I think what really happens too when you have this conversation about police brutality is that, again, there's never going to be a large collective move when we're talking white people collectively of recognizing that police brutality exists and that it's something that disproportionately affects black and brown people. They're not going to do that because if you recognize that, that means you have to recognize that there's a racist system in place that pretty much runs this country. And if you can acknowledge that, then you have to acknowledge the fact that there has been housing discrimination. You have to acknowledge the fact that the wealth gap is, it's a direct reflection and a direct result of the racist policies that exist. Then you have to address the education gap. Then you have to address the ills within the health system. When you talk about fair housing, when you talk about jobs, when you talk about discrimination, you have to acknowledge all of that. So pretty much they would rather you all just shut up because they recognize if you open a can of worms with one, it ties to something else and all of these cans open. They don't want to have that kind of smoke. They don't want to have that conversation because that threatens the privilege. That threatens what little bit of opportunity they think they have that exists. That messes it all up. And so rather than do that, they will fight you tooth and nail because they recognize there is a system that benefits them and they are not willing to give that system up at any expense because pretty much acknowledging all those issues, of course, leads into another conversation just like with Tulsa. There's a conversation about reparations. There's a conversation about making people whole with everything that may have happened to them in the past and may have been happening in the present and anything that is residual of the past that still affects people today. They're not trying to have that conversation because that's too much of a threat for them. And especially for people who may be mediocre and don't have any skill and literally the only thing keeping them afloat in this country is the racist system that's protecting them, they're not giving that up. So yes, they're going to spend all day talking about why Breonna Taylor deserved to die, why Trayvon Martin was guilty, why Jordan Davis deserved to die, why Tamir Rice deserved to die, why Walter Scott deserved to die, why Freddie, there's so many, I'm talking about, but why all these people deserve to die. Like literally that they will do that because they're not going to give up the privileges and the things that they believe is theirs. Okay, that's one of the flaws that exists with something like American exceptionalism, which is also something your current administration wants to also, put into the next budget and make sure that we put more emphasis on when it comes to schooling. American exceptionalism. Really, American exceptionalism is just code word for white. That's literally what it is, in my opinion. And it's a code word for pretty much not being accountable with anything because you're just so perfect and so great. And anybody else who goes against that must be stupid, must be just, underperforming, must not be skilled, must not be qualified, must be jealous. And that's why even with this current administration, you see that now they're deciding they want to pull racial sensitivity training out of any kind of federally funded, organizations or companies that exist. All of the government jobs, they want to pull racial sensitivity training out. Why? Because they say it's anti-American. Well, I guess you're right if you're saying that American is racist. Yeah, I agree with that. Going against the idea of racism is going against the idea of America. So I guess they're right if you want to call it anti-American. But take a look at what they're doing. Literally, they're just dismantling in any and everything that makes logical sense. Any and everything that could somewhat make society better, they're dismantling that. Why? Because they want to protect what they believe is theirs. And even when you talk about the Daniel Prude case out of Rochester, again, you're seeing the same thing with the policing. The fact that you have a black man who's unarmed, and literally you have this individual where he was having some kind of episode, and instead of helping this individual, they put a mesh bag over his head, and then they tackle him down to the ground, put the knee in his back until he suffocates and dies. And this is on camera, of course. And again, people are trying to justify why he deserved to die. Like, it's just all a freaking mess, man. It is so draining to just have to sit and witness. And again, when you're talking about what's happening with these police departments at this point, they know they can do whatever they want. Look at the federal government that's protecting them. Look at what's being established, what's being endorsed. They know that at this point, it's open season on anybody. This is why everybody's getting laid out. This is why it doesn't matter what city protest, they're all going to get tear gas. It doesn't matter, even when you talk about the women in Portland, the soccer moms who went out there and were like, well, we can go protest because they won't harm us, and all of them got laid out on the sidewalk and pepper sprayed and maced. Crazy. You're literally watching your country turn into a police state, all in the name of protecting whiteness. Absolutely crazy. And so, again, when it comes back to the lawsuit, I don't know how it's going to go. To be honest, I personally don't even think the officers that killed Breonna Taylor will ever even, see a day in court unless it's a civil suit. I don't see them ever being prosecuted because when you look at who the DA is, it goes back to that conversation I had about some black people who get into what you can call the space of being one of the good bad ones. They will overperform and do everything that is expected of them so that they don't piss off the good people. That's exactly what Homeboy's playing into. All right, he is not about to go out of his way and mess up his bag. Not for no Breonna Taylor. I can tell you that right now. Crazy, right? It's so draining. So draining. Anyway, I'm out. I'm losing my voice. I'm out. Share your 2 cents. Subscribe.
You're special. Don't you ever change a thing. Don't change a thing, my blooming flower. We have no sense of time. It's amazing. A journey with no path defined. We just live our days for the moment, creating a space.